You're working pretty hard out there. So, welcome back to Toledo, first of all, and welcome to the program.
Thank you so much. It is such a pleasure to be here this morning.
So,
And
you,
honestly, it's just a pleasure to be in the land of the living. Can I just say that, in light of COVID and so much loss in the last year and this year, it is just a blessing to be here.
so I agree with you so much. The whole, well, I don't know, called phenomenon. It's devastating what's happening specifically in our community. We are going through some things. How did you get back to Toledo, first of all? Where you been? What you been doing?
Well,
I got time. Take your time. I got time. I want to hear the whole story. Wait. Before, no, no. Before you do that, let me just say, so many people in this community embrace you and have embraced you. I don't know what kind of cologne you wear, young lady, but there's this thing that you have really made your mark in community in terms of relationships and friendship. And so people are very curious. So let's just start. First, where did you go when you left Toledo?
so when I left Toledo, and just to be clear, Toledo raised me. I
Okay.
was very involved in the community when I was in high school. I was an AXO participant, if you remember AXO with the NAACP.
Yep.
And I would do public speaking all over town. There were people like Miss Willianne Moore and others who embraced me and made sure that I was able to share my message about community and community involvement and the civil rights movement, that I was able to share that message in churches and community programming. So when I was in high school, I thought that my calling was to be an advocate. I wanted to be a lawyer and I wanted to work in politics. So that actually led me to apply to colleges in Washington, D.C.
So you know.
So I was nervous.
So let's. So I was gonna bring high school in later, but since you went down that path, let's just start. Let's just talk about the early journey. Then, where did you go to high school?
I went to Toledo Christian for high school.
Okay. So you were. You had. That was a different experience, huh?
It was definitely a different experience. I was very lucky to have parents, my mom and my stepdad, who looked out for me and always made sure that there were opportunities for me to grow as a person and as a leader.
So
And while I was in high school, I was a big athlete. And I just heard Jeff Duhart talk about his days growing up playing basketball. I actually played as well. And my parents kept me
wait.
involved
You
in
played
sports.
what? You played what? What did
I
you
played
play?
ball. Look, I'm a number three, okay?
Ooh.
I'm a big athlete. Don't come for my basketball experience and resume
Oh,
now.
okay. so 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 you were totally engaged in community. I'm seeing that, and you know what? I'm thinking it like I don't know anything about you, just for the audience's sake. But
Sure.
I remember you well. I remember you well, and may I, both your mom and your stepdad. I got to kudos to them for who you become, and I know that you celebrate them all the time. But I
Yes.
do want to do that. So, they, uh, and may I mention your stepdad right at this moment?
Absolutely. Please. He's
Uh,
definitely to me.
so yeah, you used to hang around him quite a bit too. That's Clyde Hughes, former reporter for the Toledo Blade. You talk about some of the things he did real quick,
Absolutely.
and
So
how he
Clyde is,
helped you.
yes.
Are you there?
So I'm here. Yes, Clyde is a force. I mean, first of all, when I was growing up, he was, if I'm not mistaken, one of the founding members, if not the founder of NOBEMA, the Northwest Ohio Black Media Association, which is involved with NABJ, it's an affiliate of the National Association of Black Journalists.
Yep.
And I always tell the story that even at a young age, probably in elementary school, I was probably the first secretary of NOBEMA because he had me licking envelopes and stuffing folders, and I was basically the receptionist, but no one really knew that back behind the scenes.
Wow.
But no, Clyde is phenomenal, and he actually created, I'll never forget this, it was the MLK basketball tournament that he would have every year on MLK Day where he would bring different teams together in honor of Dr. King. So he's a reporter. He still is. He writes incredible stories, and him and my mom were the best examples for me of perseverance. My mom is incredibly accomplished in her own right. She actually works for the Department of Interior for the Bureau of Reclamation in Colorado.
Wow.
And the two of them helped me understand the value of hard work, but also refusing to accept no.
So you evolved so graciously and grew. I won't say you left here with pigtails, but you were. When you left town, where did you go to school? You head out to school where?
So when I graduated from Toledo Christian, I headed to Washington, D.C. to attend American University.
Wow. Why'd you choose American? Not that it's a great school. It's a great school, but it's a great school, but why American?
It's a funny story. So one day, my mom was on a flight to the West Coast, and on her way back, my mom's like me. We'll talk to just about anyone who's sitting next to us on the flight. And she talks to a woman about schools, and my mom told her about me and how I was interested in politics and law. And the woman said, oh, well, maybe your daughter should check out my alma mater, American University, in Washington, D.C. And my mom came home from that flight, and she told me, and I remember thinking, is this a real school?
Yeah.
And, what are their colors? Red, white, blue? They were.
Wow.
The American Eagles. But no, it was it was an incredible school. What I loved about it is that they had a school of public affairs, so that I could learn about the law, but I could also learn about politics as well. So I was grateful. I feel like that's one of those moments in my life, and I've had many of them, where it's divine intervention and where the universe, God, comes down and he puts a word in someone to give to you that's meant for you. And that was one of those moments, because American University set me up to be able to have incredible experiences in politics and in law in my future.
So, from American, what'd you do?
After American, I actually went and worked on Capitol Hill. I worked while I was at American, but also after I graduated, I went back to Capitol Hill and I worked for a few members of Congress and had the chance to really see how politics is done in D.C. I was one of those Capitol Hill staffers that we keep hearing about, and I had the chance to have meetings with constituents coming into town and help as a legislative director to help a member of Congress to figure out his legislative platform and what he wanted to be known for in Washington. And I received my master's during that time because I wanted to learn more about political communications. And then I went to, after studying quite a bit, I was accepted into law school, and I decided to attend Howard University School of Law.
Wow. So all this time you come from high school and now you're at the Capitol. What's that maturation process like? The Ashley Futrell that was at Capitol Hill and the Ashley Futrell that was at Toledo Christian, what's the difference in those two young ladies?
That is a great question. I would say the difference between those two ladies is a firm sense of who I am and who I was at that particular period of time. So when I went to Washington, I did not have political connections. My colleagues, they had friends and family members who could give them some opportunities and a lift and a leg up to get into congressional offices, but I didn't know anyone. I always liken it. I came to D.C. for college, and I looked around me, and my friends were from Philly and New York City and all these places, and I felt so far behind. But actually, a contact in Toledo put me in touch with his sister who worked on Capitol Hill. So a contact from Toledo is actually how I ended up even working there. So when I was a staffer, I would tell myself that I'm here for an assignment. This is my purpose. And that helped me because, I always talk about this, but imposter syndrome, this whole idea of, feeling like an imposter in these big environments, it's real. But at that moment, when I worked on Capitol Hill, I realized that I had something to offer and bring to the table. So I said the difference was just a woman who knew who she was and that this wasn't about me. It was about the people who came before me who helped me get to that particular place. And also the point was to make a difference in communities, and that's what I tried to do and what I focused on.
So you apparently have this set of values that simply embraces community. Always been that way? Always will be? Where's it come from?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that last part? I didn't
Your sense of your values, your sense of community. Where does that come from? Short version.
Absolutely. Honestly, it comes from my family. I had incredible grandparents and family members. Judge Duhart just mentioned this before when he talked about his grandmother, and I can relate. I came from good stock, as they say, and my grandfather was a constable, which is, kind of like a sheriff of a township in Ottawa Lake, Michigan, and every day I would see him put on his uniform, get on his police Harley, it was purple, yes, and he would patrol in the neighborhood, and he is the person who really instilled the values in public service. And I watched him as he worked with members of the community, as he tried to solve problems. And, it's funny, my grandfather was a former football player at the old, if you remember this, the Burnham High School in Sylvania. Before it was Northview, it was Burnham.
You know what? People don't know. People don't know that history. That's a beautiful history there. That was a small enclave of African Americans, to be exact. But go right ahead. We will talk about that.
And, yes, and my grandparents, the Futrell family, or really the Randalls at the time, they were one of the first. I think they were the first black family who went to Toledo, to Sylvania schools. So my grandfather was an example for me every day, and I always tell this story, and if you'll indulge me for a second.
Go right ahead.
When I was growing up, I would do my homework at my grandparents' house after school, and at this time I went to Rosary Cathedral, actually, for elementary school before moving on, and my grandparents would pick me up, and one day I was in a room at my grandparents' home, and I was doing my homework, and just doing what I normally do, studying, and my grandfather poked his head in the room, and he said, "Keep your head in the book." And I said, "Okay, Grandpa." He's just talking. So my grandpa does what he needs to do, and he leaves my grandma's home, and a few hours later, my grandfather had an aneurysm, and it took his life.
Oh, man.
And those words were the last words that he ever told me.
Wow.
And I share that story for many reasons, but because he told me to keep my head in the book. And that wasn't something that I took lightly, but also, if those were the last words that your hero, your grandfather told you, then those are my set of values,
Yeah.
That is what I need to do. So I've always tried to be someone who cares about others, who I believe life is about relationships, and I always try to make sure that I kept my head in the book, so that I also did what I needed to do to make sure that other people had opportunities and that I could really make a difference and be an advocate.
So I'm gonna do a sidebar here, if you don't mind.
Sure.
You worked on Capitol Hill. You saw all this stuff on television. What were your initial responses when you saw the things over the past 2 weeks? What did you see as those images came across the screen?
When I saw the images, it was horrifying. The first thing I thought of, honestly, I thought about all of the people that were inside the Capitol, but also the people that you often don't think about. So I thought about the staffers, the maintenance people. I thought about the people who clean offices, who work in the post office down in the basement of the Capitol. And I thought about all the people whose names are not on the outside door. And the reason I thought about them is because I remember when I worked on Capitol Hill, we would often have lockdowns where sometimes the Capitol would receive a suspicious package or something there would be some kind of a threat or alert. And I remember in those times we would receive an announcement and we would go on lockdown, which basically actually meant that we couldn't leave our offices. And what I really remember during that time is that there was no cell phone service. And why was there no cell phone service? Because all of our parents and our spouses and children and everyone else was calling us to make sure that we were okay. So you couldn't call out and you couldn't receive phone calls in. So in that moment, I actually thought about the staffers and the employees who work there, because people don't often realize that there are hundreds of staff members who make Capitol Hill work. So the first thing I thought of was, oh my goodness, I hope everyone is safe. But also I thought about all of the families and the extensions of families who were affected, because it was truly a scary sight. And I put myself in that position. I'm actually a part of a email listserv of current and former black staffers in Capitol Hill. Okay. And that email list, sometimes it goes a little quiet, but it was activated that day because we were all emailing each other and just trying to make sure that everyone was okay. And people checked in. They would say, check in, wellness check, I'm okay. Or other people would say, I'm scared, I'm crying, I can't believe this is actually happening. So I was terrified on that day for friends and colleagues and just people that I didn't even know. And this is just outside of the obvious of what was going on around us. And I was in literal disbelief.
Yeah, I think we all are still in disbelief. Powerful moment, and your having been there, knowing everyone, or knowing many of the people, knowing the rooms, the surge. What in your mind is the answer to situations like what's just occurred?
I'm sorry, what is my answer to what just
No,
occurred?
how do we prevent that from happening again from a person who's been inside? How do you protect the members of Congress, the families, the workers? What's a fail-safe in your mind? I know that's a big question, but you were there. What are the procedures? Let's do that one. You knew where you could go in that moment. If you were there at the Capitol, you knew where you could go.
Being completely honest, I'm not sure if I absolutely knew where I could have gone in that moment. Now, don't get me wrong. You receive so many emails when you work there, and there are people who are always trying to make sure that you know where to go. But oftentimes what people don't realize is that every office has its own sort of set of policies and ideas. Every member of Congress, every senator outlines the way that they want their office to run. But I think going forward, what must happen is that there must be a very detailed plan for how every office will operate and what they will do to make sure that their staffers are safe, employees are safe, and obviously the member or the senator is safe as well. I mean, these are challenging times. We were already going through a pandemic, and on top of that, now we have this, these events that occurred in the Capitol. So I think that everyone has to just put their head back down and really think, okay, this is where we are. What do we need to do here? And several voices need to be at the table, including the District of Columbia, the mayor there, as well as other people in law enforcement. Everyone has to come to the table and think about what happened and what the action steps should be going forward, because that just can't happen again.
Well.
And it's just, at this point, we have to make sure that, we keep, obviously, our elected officials safe, but more importantly, that we get to the point where nothing like that is ever possible for any group of people.
Yeah.
And also, I think it's important to make sure that politicians tell the truth about elections and that they tell the truth about what's going on in our world, because only the truth is going to make sure that we don't have, incidents like what occurred.
So you're a big city girl now. You left D.C. and you went to New York. What was that transition? How did you get there? What were you doing? Talk to us.
Sure. I was not a big city girl. I'm still not a big city girl.
Oh, okay.
I went to New York City, yes, and I enjoyed it. But New York is a tough place.
Oh.
It is a place where
How so?
you have to you have to be grounded. You have to know who you are because you're going to meet all walks of life, all different kinds of people. But what I love about New York is that it's the hustle and the grind. I love the fact that everyone just has something that they're working on. And just to give you an example, when I worked in D.C. and when I lived in D.C., and that was for 13 years, people would often come up to you and ask you, what do you do? That was the question, what do you do? But in New York City, people would ask, what are you working on? And that's a different question. And something that I like to implement in my own life, even back just wherever I am, especially here in Toledo, because sometimes what you're doing in your quote-unquote day job may not necessarily be what you're passionate about or what you want to talk to this person about. Your identity is not just in what you do for a living. So when you ask a person, what are you working on, it's nice because you get a chance to learn about their creative interests. So New York, I went to New York after law school to be an assistant district attorney in the Manhattan DA's office. And I'm sure we'll get into why in the world I decided to be a prosecutor later. But New York was a good chance for me to grow and to grow as an attorney, but also as a woman. I love going to Harlem. I love being able to be around so many talented young professionals who, they drove me. They encouraged me to dream higher and to think about the things I could do, but the things that we could do together.
So, so you were assistant prosecutor there, and you just asked your own question, so why don't you answer?
I know, I set that up.
You very well, thank you. I've got it written down, but go right ahead.
That's fair. That is totally fair. So when I was in law school, I went to Howard University. I'm so proud of my alma mater. And I went to law school thinking that, well, first I thought, I have 2 degrees, so I need to pay back these loans. That's the first thing I thought of.
Yep.
And I had to think about what kind of job I would have. And at this time, Howard's a full-time program, which means that I couldn't work during the day and go to school at night at Howard, which meant that I'd worked for 7 years in politics. And I had to put all of that on hold to start at the bottom as a first-year law student with people who were just coming out of college. It was a humbling experience. At this time, President Obama was president, and my friends in politics were going to go work in the White House.
Wow. Yeah.
And here I am taking first-year law classes. So trust me, it was a very humbling experience, but I kept the eyes on the prize, like I would often watch growing up. I would keep those eyes on the prize. And I had a professor in my first year in criminal law. She assigned me to do a mock trial. She didn't know me at all. And my classmates in my section we were all assigned to do different parts of a mock trial. And I did an opening statement. And after I did my opening statement, my professor, a black woman, Professor Mika, she told the class, she said, we got a trial attorney over here. Ooh. And she was talking about me. And it was like an aha moment because at this point I thought I would go to some big law firm or I was focused on, okay, I'm going to go to a firm and go from there. But I never thought about actually being a trial attorney. So at that point I thought, okay, if I were going to be a trial attorney, which side would I be on? Oh. And I looked at my classmates at Howard, and trust me, they were some of the most talented attorneys and future attorneys you would ever see. But most of them wanted to go on the defense side. They wanted to be defense attorneys. And I thought about what it would be like to be a black prosecutor. So I did an internship with a black federal judge in the Eastern District of Virginia, Judge Gerald Bruce Lee. And through that experience, I had a chance to see federal prosecutors, and I was able to see how much discretion they had. And I saw that they had access to all the evidence in a case. And I thought, God forbid I was ever in trouble and I was ever prosecuted. I would want a prosecutor, not just who looks like me, but who has my values on the other side. So I decided that I would do an internship. I did an internship in the Philadelphia DA's office, and I had a chance to actually try cases in my second year summer. And that was it was a challenging experience, but it told me that as a bit of an older law student, this was something that I thought I could do. So when I went to New York City to be an assistant district attorney, I handled over 260 cases at any given time.
Wow.
And oftentimes, the defendant and me, we would be the only two people of color in the entire courtroom.
Wow.
And that was a very powerful experience because when I looked at the defendant or the person accused at the time, that could have been my cousin, that could have been my uncle, my father, that could have been anyone. And I always thought about that and treated the person accused of a crime with dignity and respect because, well, one, that's how my parents raised me, but also because I realized that there's so much that I can do in that role. So I pursued alternatives to incarceration in many occurrences. I felt like incarceration wasn't always the answer. And I've always tried to be a thoughtful prosecutor, even though there were times where I received backlash. People would sometimes tell me I'm soft on crime or that, I'll get it when I'm older. I would often hear that. But, now that I'm a little bit older, I still feel the same way. And I feel like incarceration is not the only, sometimes it's not the only option. And there's so many other options. But I also firmly believe that we are better, all of us, than the worst thing we've ever done. And I didn't come up with that quote. That was Brian Stevenson from Just Mercy. But I truly believe in that theory and in that belief that we're not just going to prosecute people. I didn't want to be the prosecutor who just prosecuted, but I wanted to make sure that when people return to society, that they had all the resources they needed to be successful when they return. So that's housing, that's a job, and making sure that they had the skills that they needed to have a successful life.
So I'm going to just ask a generic question. Is the judicial playing field, is that a level playing field in your estimation?
Well, this is what I'll say. Equal justice under the law is not just some theory that's out there. If we truly mean what we say, then it will be an equal process. It will be a level playing field. But this is what has to happen. We need more minority attorneys. We need more minority judges. Again, just hearing Judge Duhart talk about a pipeline is encouraging to me. I mean, it is something that I aspire to do that and to help build that pipeline. Because the more of us who are in the criminal justice system and all aspects of it, and not just on the defense side, but the defense side, the prosecution, the judges, the court reporters, the clerks of the court, every single role in a courthouse, the more of us there are, in my opinion, the better opportunities that we have as a people to make sure that the goal of equal justice under the law is actually realized. So I'm a big fan of mentoring. In fact, when I was back in high school, I attended the University of Toledo Summer Minority Law Program. That's actually where I met my best friend, Erica Little. But in that program, it was great because I had the chance to learn about the law at a very young age. So one of the things that I want to do is continue working with the University of Toledo and with, Upward Bound, the NAACP, and so many other organizations to make sure that young people understand that, yes, okay, we want to protest. Yes, we're upset about police brutality. But this is a way to turn that protest into action by becoming part of the system and by making change from the inside. And everyone has a role, to be clear, in this social justice movement, but I truly believe that having a seat at the table and being a practitioner, going to law school, getting those skills, getting that degree will actually help us to be able to make some dents so that we can get closer to that value, that goal of equal justice under the law.
Hey, listen, we got to take a quick break. You know what I was worried? I was worried that you wouldn't have an opinion. I'm wrong. Hey, no. Listen, I'm just kidding.
You know me.
Yeah. I'm just kidding. Can you take a moment? We got to take a commercial break, and we'll be right back.
Yes.
Thank you. Still relatively young and got lots and lots of energy. Ashley, I like to just do a couple minutes, just a few seconds on your being a prosecutor here in Toledo. I'd like to focus a little bit right after that on what you're doing now, but you ultimately returned to Toledo when?
I returned to Toledo in 2018.
Okay. Okay. And you work for the what did you do? What position did you hold where?
Sure. So I returned to Toledo to be an assistant United States attorney in the U.S. Attorney's Office in Toledo.
Okay. Okay.
And just to give you a little bit of a backstory, if you don't mind, on that,
No.
when I was in the Manhattan DA's office, and this is again one of those intervening moments that the universe just kind of creates. But I was an assistant district attorney in Manhattan, and I heard about an opportunity to go to a conference for an organization that I belonged to called the National Black Prosecutors Association.
Okay.
And it's funny because I wasn't even supposed to go, but a senior colleague, his jury was still out, so there was no decision, and there was an opening, and I was asked if I wanted to go very last minute, and I said, sure, that sounds great, I'll go. So I went to the conference, and I connected with some colleagues who were in Cleveland in the U.S. Attorney's Office, and I found out later about an opportunity to come back to Toledo to be an assistant U.S. attorney. So I packed my bags and moved from working in Manhattan but living in Brooklyn to Toledo. And it was an incredible experience to learn from some attorneys who were very good at what they do. They were very smart, very capable. But what I loved about it is that I had the chance to stand up in federal court in Toledo, to return home and stand up in court, a place that raised me and represent the United States of America. Now, look, it's tough when you're a line federal prosecutor. You can't always make every decision. There's obviously a hierarchy. But I was grateful for the experiences that I had there. And, it allowed me to really refine my trial skills and to learn more. I remember going to trainings at the National Advocacy Center, which is where all the Department of Justice employees are trained. It's in South Carolina. And that experience really prepared me for what I'm doing now when I made my move to Shumaker Group and Kendrick to be a business attorney.
So what does that mean, business attorney?
So, it's funny. That's a great question. It can mean many different things. So as a business attorney, what that means is, imagine a small or a medium-sized business and the typical needs that you'll have on a daily basis. So that could be anything from, do I need to create an LLC? What's going to happen with my taxes? Am I going to have employees? Will they sign employment contracts? Do I have to, force them, or do I have to ask them to get a COVID test or to get a vaccine? But also contracts that happen as well. One of the things that I'm most excited about is working with employers when it comes to employment law, because I feel like my training as a federal prosecutor, my training in investigations is going to help me go in and actually be an investigator, to go in and help these companies figure out what's going on. I really want to lift the hood a bit and say what's going on here. I want to do cultural audits where I'm able to come in and help a company or business and organization figure out, how do I not only recruit but retain diverse talent? But also, how do I mitigate and make sure that I help these companies, prevent and correct workplace harassment and discrimination? So that's what I'm really excited about, because I could bring in my experience and my knowledge of the law, but also as a black woman and with experience with diversity, equity, and inclusion, I could bring those two together to help companies and make sure that they're educated and they know what it takes to make sure that this is a good working environment. Because one thing I'll mention is that we spend so much time at work. I know I have. And what happens is that what happens at work affects our families. It affects our health. It affects so many things around us. So we have to get the workplace right.
Okay.
And my goal is to help businesses with all aspects of their business, but also to help these businesses to, if they mean what they say, if you actually say you want a diverse workforce, to me that's not enough. You have to look at the community and look at the situation around you. If you are successful and you're able to get that incredible black professional to come in and work for you, I want businesses to ask the question, is this person going to feel comfortable here? What are the other employees talking about on break? Is that going to make that diverse employee feel comfortable? So I really think that retaining diverse talent is something that I want companies to really focus on. And as a business attorney, Shumaker with Kendrick has a great reputation in this community as well-trained attorneys who do a variety of services. If you're looking for someone to help you create a will or to help you with an estate, a real estate contract, or if you want to buy a company, or I don't know, if you want information or help with owning a franchise, whatever it is, there's someone that within that firm that can help you. So I really want to be the community's liaison and, just offer my services so that if anyone has any questions or, and the one thing I will say too is sometimes, we all hope that we never need an attorney, but I found in my practice that having someone on call and actually retaining a attorney ahead of time before you have the problem is actually going to save you money and potential litigation down the road so that you don't spend money later when you could have corrected the problem in the beginning.
So, Ashley Futrell, I'm going to ask you a question that they ask in New York. What are you working on?
Well, I'm working on everything. When you first join a new place, it is grind mode. And that's what I'm in right now. I am in grind mode where I'm putting my head down and I'm making sure that I know what I'm talking about and that I'm thorough. Because so many times, we see folks who, they have big talk with no action.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I'm making sure that when you call me, I work for you and that I can get the job done effectively. But also, as you know, I'm very involved in the community. I'm a new member of the Toledo, Ohio chapter of the Link Incorporated.
Yeah, I saw. Wait. I saw you out during with the Links. Girl, you guys were out making sure people were registering to vote during the last election. I'm going, these professional women, you are serious. So I applaud you and your, may I say, sisters for what you did. I think that was my first time seeing you. So I know you are a community, and that was the question. How are you going to work within the context of community?
Absolutely. And, the Links are a great organization because they're always looking at what they can do for the community. We were at various corners with our signs encouraging people to vote, and it's something that the organization absolutely embraces. But I'm also a member of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated, a Divine Nine sorority, and that is also an organization where scholarship and service is so paramount to the organization. So, and to answer your question, but those are some of the organizations I'm a part of, but also when I think about, for example, the Toledo Opera, you wouldn't think that the Toledo Opera would have been at the beginning, at the front of different arts organizations that were coming out and talking about what happened with George Floyd last year and so many incidents even before that.
Wow. So
they have a community engagement committee that is made up of minority community members who want to talk about art forms like the opera that have traditionally been considered white and elitist. And they're looking at how to make sure that the opera, for example, is a place where people feel comfortable going and where, it's representative of who we are as a country. And another organization or another idea that I'm working on, and I would love if anyone is interested in helping me with this, is one of the things I noticed as a prosecutor is that the jury pool was one of the least diverse places or the least diverse groups I have ever seen. When I tell you that I would often, pick juries. That was my job, is to pick a jury. But the problem is that the juries, especially in Ohio, and whether it's federal court, the Northern District of Ohio, or whether it's Lucas County, I have always noticed that, and even in New York City, that the jury pools are not diverse. And what I want people to know and understand is that when we talk about social justice issues, when we're out here protesting and talking about what we can do to improve our society, here's the thing. We should at the very least want a defendant, and let's just say a minority defendant in some cases, to have a jury of his or her peers. But if we're avoiding jury duty, and if we're saying, well, I can't make it for one reason or another, and look, don't get me wrong, there's some legitimate reasons, and I get that, but jury duty and jury service is a great way to make sure that a person has a jury of their peers. So what I want to do is, I want the community to embrace the idea of jury duty and the idea that this is our duty to make sure that we have an impact on the criminal justice system in a very direct way. So that's one project that I've been working on, and I'm looking forward to hopefully working with some of the organizations that I'm a part of on that. But also, honestly, I'm just trying to work with youth. My passion, honestly, is just working with young people and helping them think bigger. I think sometimes in Toledo, I see people that play small. They say, I'm just from Toledo. But we have some of the most talented individuals who live here and who have left. I think about one of my high school friends, Robbie Perry, who I think was on your show recently.
Yep.
And he's a great example of someone who was educated here in Toledo, Ohio, and then went to D.C. before he went to D.C., he went to Brown. He went to Mississippi or somewhere in the South, and then he also is now in D.C. He ran for office there, and he is someone who's a thought leader when it comes to minorities in politics. And I just think about how much we can do if we just keep our head focused on whatever our assignment is. And I truly believe every one of us has that assignment. So those are some of the things I'm working on, educating youth, making sure that we diversify our jury pools, and really just showing up authentically and using all the tools and experiences and abilities I have to make an impact on other people as I work to become a very useful and a business attorney who can help so many people in my community.
So this is what we have to do. We have run out of time. So this is so good because I can ask you on the air, will you come back?
Absolutely. Anytime for you. And I just want to thank you for your commitment to our community, the African American Legacy Project, and everything that you have done for me and just for our community over the years. I appreciate you, and I will absolutely come back.
Oh, so, Ashley Futrell, big heart, big commitment to community, wonderful professional. Now that Shumaker, Loop, and Kendrick, we know you're going to succeed, and I'll be calling you soon to bring you right back to our program because we need to hear your voice. Hey, listen, we got to get out of here. Next week, our first Black History Month program, we're going to reach all the way down to Florida and talk to Dr. Johnny Early. He's formerly the chair of